Hi, I am Vanchika and I share insights about food tech and food processing. Today's topic is fermentation, so let's dive in and talk all about how fermentation works and why it matters. So let's start with what fermentation actually is. It's basically a metabolic process where tiny microorganisms turn sugar into things like alcohol, acids, and gases. We use this process not just to preserve food, but also to boost flavor and even in biotechnology. Alright, on this slide we have got a great quote by Louis Pasteur. Fermentation is life without air. Basically, that means it's an anaerobic breakdown of carbohydrates by microbes. So, in other words, these tiny microbes do their work without needing oxygen. Now, let's dive into a little bit of history. In ancient Egypt, people were already using fermentation for things like bread and beer. Over in India, we have been using it for ages to make curd and dosa batter. And in 1857, Louis Pasteur came along and proved that microbes are the real reason for fermentation happening. Pretty cool, right? Alright, let's talk about the different types of fermentation. First up, we have got alcoholic fermentation. This is where yeast turns sugar into things like beer, wine, and bread. Then we have got lactic acid fermentation, where lactic acid bacteria helps us to get yummy food like yogurt, cheese, and pickles. And finally, there's a acetic acid fermentation. This is when acetobacter turns alcohol into vinegar. So yeah, these are the types of fermentation. Alright students, in this slide we're talking about the key players in food processing. Yeast or Saccharomyces cerevisiae is a star fermenter for baking and brewing. Lactic acid bacteria like Lactobacillus gives us yogurt and cheese through fermentation. Acetobacter steps into making vinegar, and then we have got Clostridium and Propenium bacteria which are involved in some unique fermentation processes. Alright, in this section we're looking at some common fermented products. In food, we have got bread, yogurt, cheese, pickle, kimchi, idli, and dosa, all delicious results of fermentation. When it comes to beverages, you're looking at beer, wine, and kombucha. And on the industrial side, fermentation helps us to create things like antibiotics, enzymes, and bioethanol. So these are the everyday products where fermentation plays a huge role. Now let's walk through the fermentation process step by step. First, we start with the process itself, basically how we set up condition for fermentation. Next, we have the raw materials like sugar or starches that the microorganisms will feed on. Then the microorganisms action is where yeast or bacteria get to work, converting those raw material into alcohol, acids or gases. Finally, we end up with our final products, whether they are food like bread and cheese, or beverages like beer and wine, or industrial products like enzymes and bioethanol. So that's it. Moving on to the merits of fermentation. First up, it enhances the flavor and aroma of foods, making them tastier and more complex. It also boosts nutrition by adding vitamins and probiotics. Another big plus is natural preservation. Fermentation helps keep food fresh longer. And finally, there are industrial uses like producing biofuels and medicines. So, fermentation isn't just tasty, it's also super useful in a lot of ways. Alright, now let's look at some of the downsides of fermentation. One key risk is contamination. If harmful bacteria get in, it can spoil the batch. Over fermentation can also lead to off flavor and sour taste that you might not want. Plus, fermented foods often have a limited shelf life and need controlled conditions like the right temperature and cleanliness to keep everything safe and tasty. So while fermentation is great, it does require a bit of careful handling. Moving on to the modern advances in fermentation. First, we have got genetic engineering of microbes, which basically means tweaking microorganisms to work even better for us. Then there's the rise of probiotic foods, which are super popular for gut health. We also have sustainable bioenergy, where fermentation helps to create eco friendly fuels. And lastly, fermentation is making waves in pharmaceuticals, helping to produce medicines and supplements more efficiently. So, yeah, fermentation definitely gone high tech. Alright, let's check out more fun facts about fermentation. Did you know the holes in Swiss cheese are actually bubbles of carbon dioxide made by propionine bacterium? And kombucha, everyone's favorite trendy drink, is brewed using a SCOBY. That's a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. Finally, ancient Indian text already praised curd as a health food centuries ago. So, fermentation has been fascinating people across cultures and ages. Alright, let's bring it all together. Fermentation is really the perfect blend of ancient art and modern science. It's essential not just for creating delicious foods, but also for boosting health and supporting sustainability. Plus, the future of fermentation is super exciting. It's paving the way for eco friendly fuels and innovative functional foods. In short, fermentation is an age old practice with a bright, sustainable future. Alright, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want more of this kind of content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll always stay in the loop for more tips, fun facts, and cool science. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.